Hello there, welcome to Blitz Transmissions. I'm Tommy, and for this video we have something a little special. We have another addition to the Blitz Transmissions interview series. Before, of course, I introduced our guest this time around, I do want to go through the laundry list of links that can be found in the description below, the usual housekeeping. First off, if you're not subscribed on YouTube, what are you doing? Subscribe to Blitz Transmissions. I've got awesome Star Wars content coming out all the time. If you're an ARC Trooper in the Patreon, you would have seen this interview early. If you'd like access to early content, monthly giveaways, and other awesome benefits, you can check out the link to the Patreon in the description below. Become an ARC Trooper for just $4.99 a month. If you like the stuff I do on YouTube, you want to support the channel more directly as opposed to all my other stuff, you could also check out the YouTube channel membership Rancor Battalion, just 99 cents a month. Gives you access to exclusive badges, priority replies in the comments section, and of course you get all the other cool stuff like early reviews as opposed to early content with everything else like you get with Patreon, and you get to vote on what I review next for the channel. If you want some Blitz Transmissions swag, like this Blitz Transmissions hoodie I have on right now, I'm also wearing the Blitz Transmissions trucker hat. You just can't see it because it's on backwards. I have other merch like that in my Printify shop, the Blitz Transmissions Armory in the description below, as well as links to my social media and my Discord server. So, today I'm joined by Mark Newbold, who is going to introduce us to a facet of Star Wars fandom and community, and honestly a pretty integral part of the history of Star Wars before the days of the internet and social media being so popular as they are now. We are going to be talking to Mark. He's been in the journalism side of Star Wars for a good while now, working with places like Star Wars Insider. Now he works with Fantha Tracks, also working with Jedi News in between. So, Mark, how are we doing today, sir?
Oh, very well. Looking forward to having a chat about all sorts of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to join. I know we have like a 5-hour time difference between us. So I appreciate we were able to find a day and a time to work that out.
As long as there's not a 5-hour delay in between questions and answers, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, I think so too. So, Mark, just to kind of get everyone up to speed here, share with us, what's your Star Wars story? Why journalism and specifically Star Wars? What has gravitated you towards this franchise for so long now?
Wow, how long have you got? Okay, let's summarize. So, being in the UK, we got Star Wars in 78, so I was nearly 7 at the time, kind of premium age to get into Star Wars. It grabbed me. Being a Brit, we've got Doctor Who, we had Blake 7 coming and all that sort of stuff. Star Wars comes out, HD, fantastic, wonderful, brilliant, knocks everything else out the park, and it never let go. So when all my contemporaries and friends at school kind of got into all the other distractions of teenage years, which I did as well, but I never let go of the Star Wars stuff and just kept on going with it. And I think, I did fanfic for a while and really enjoyed, well, actually quite a long while, and that really enjoyed that. And so the creative juices were sort of working for me. But one of the things that I got into really quite early on, I was about 10, was Fantha Tracks, the old official Star Wars fan club magazine, and was so into reading about that and learning about what was going on behind the scenes and all the other stuff that made, the making of the sausage, so to speak, that I got really interested in that. And so knowing as much about the behind the scenes stuff was almost as important as knowing about what was on the screen. And just moved that forward a few years. I started websites in 96, started, as I say, doing the fanfic stuff and just moving forward. And then in 2005, I had the chance to write for, or rather to interview the editor, the then editor of Star Wars Insider, Frank Parisi. And just at the end of the email exchange, as it was then, this is like pre-Skype and, digital stuff like this, just said, I would love to put something into Insider. What do I need to do? And he said, just pitch me some ideas. And then a year later, one of those ideas landed in 2006. And it's just gone on from there. And the site, Lightsaber, went from being a fanfic site to a news site. And so I think just that news, staying on top of what's going on, that sort of side of it, really took over in around about 2005, 2006. And it's really continued through the end of Lightsaber onto Jedi News for 7 years, and now with Fantha Tracks. So, yeah, I think I'm just nosy. I just like to know what's going on. And there's a fine line. It's funny because I'm very fortunate with doing the stuff for I did StarWars.com for a while. Insider I'm still doing. I write for ILM.com and SkywalkerSound.com. So you're sort of writing about stuff that's happening. Some of it's ILM, especially some of its way back old stuff. Some of it's very up to date and modern, and the same with Skywalker. I've touched wood, managed to find the line between knowing where the demarcation line is of what's a spoiler, what's not, what you can talk about, what you probably shouldn't if you want to keep doing that cool stuff. And thankfully, the right people kind of know my heart's in the right place. I've not dropped the ball. I'm not saying I've never dropped the ball on things that I shouldn't have posted. Certainly not on purpose, but every now and again you blur the lines. But I'm pretty good at knowing where the gap is. So yeah, that's really where my heart lies. Is that side of Star Wars fandom.
Absolutely, and it's kind of I know Dave Filoni has a great analogy with this. He calls it the tree of trust, and he adds a branch to the tree of trust. But just as easily as there can have a branch exist, that branch can be cut from the tree of trust. Yeah. So it definitely is a fine line to walk. As and that goes with any fandom beyond Star Wars and any aspect of this wonderful fandom we're in. So the biggest thing that I think I would want to know from you is, so my dad was a subscriber to Star Wars Insider back in the 2000s, and I actually remember having Star Wars pillowcases that were from Star Wars Insider that he ordered through the magazine. And we all through like the days of the Clone Wars and things like that, we would get the magazines, and I actually think I still have copies of them somewhere in my archives over here. But how different was it back then? How did you go about finding information to make articles about? And because I feel like with social media, it's obviously a lot easier and a lot more accessible to come by information, and things are a lot more instantaneous. What was the process like before we have, the days of social media with everything being so instantaneous?
That's a really good question, actually. So a lot of events, we're lucky in the UK because a lot of the films were made here, and so a lot of the actors live here. So we would have events that local to, I live in Birmingham, so middle of the country. So a lot of events are nearby or within an hour or two, but mostly within half an hour in Birmingham, lots of stuff there. So I would go to events, I would meet actors, I'd meet cast and crew type folks, and just generally get chatting, getting to know them, getting friendly enough that I could ask whether or not I could, interview them for Insider or grab a quote for Insider. And so that side of it was reasonably straightforward. And I think back in the day, now you make a great point. Now, because of social media, because of the immediacy of the technology, I could reach out, or any of us could reach out to anybody and try and make a connection. Lucasfilm and Disney are very formal and correct in that there are pathways and routes to go to make these things happen. Now, sometimes you may have a pre-existing relationship. I'll give you an example. I'm very lucky. I've interviewed Anthony Daniels 6 or 7 times.
Wow.
So
awesome.
if I pitch something to Insider and say, like last year, Anthony's doing Star Wars in concert in LA, and they're doing 4 performances. And wouldn't it be great if we spoke to Anthony about this wonderful return for Star Wars in concert? And my editor Chris said, actually, yeah, it would, wouldn't it? Can you make that happen? Yes, I can make that happen. So that was the one that, because I've got a pre-existing relationship, I was able to make that one happen. Other guests, which I'm still chasing, take time, take longer, don't work quite so well. But stepping back, there was a little bit more. It was a little bit more Wild West, really, in that I could come to my editor then. Jonathan Wilkins was the editor back then, and say, John, I think I can get an interview with Irving Kershner. Really? Yeah. Go for it. So that when the Empire 10th anniversary issue came out, I'd actually, in the intervening time, done an interview with him for my old site Lightsaber, and used quotes from the interview in a broader piece about Empire. So it was a little bit more not who you know or what you know, but just being in the right place at the right time. And so I think over the time, I've sort of curated a little circle of people that I can either go through friends or contacts or whatever to get to people. But the bottom line is, especially with Insider, all of it has to go through Lucasfilm and Disney. So they need to know that you're going, you're chasing somebody for an interview. You can't just rock up, go, hey, I've just interviewed Kathleen Kennedy. Do you want 3 issues of that? It doesn't work that way. But back in the day, it was a little bit more, you would bring it to the editor, whereas now it's the editor will say, well, we've got more of a plan for what what we're looking at and where we want to go with these things. So it is a little bit different, but luckily I've never thought of it in the way you've said it there. Really, I suppose when I started with Insider and really got the ball rolling with it, sort of 2010 was when it really kicked up a head of steam. So we have got Twitter and Facebook by then. Yeah, it was just sort of meeting the right people. I knew Jeremy Bullock quite well, so he was somebody I could speak to, and there was just other folks that you do enough of an interview where, for example, I got a good reputation with Lucasfilm back in sort of 2005-6. So when I interviewed Anthony for the first time, he said, "You've come recommended by Lucasfilm. They like what you do." Wow. Then I interviewed Rick McCullum and just got chit-chatting with Rick at the end of the interview and said, I'm chasing Kirshner. I've nearly got his details. I've got the Directors Guild of America who are going to line it up. And he went, I can do that for you. And within a week, I was speaking to Kirshner. So that's cool. So there's certain serendipity to it as well. Also, I think if you're not too much of a dick about things, because you do see, having been on the scene for a fair while, you do see some, I'm not referring to myself as a journalist, but you see yourself doing a certain thing. You see other folks coming and going, and there's a lot of people who come and go. Absolutely. And some can be quite arrogant about it. And I think I'll just try and be as the same as I was back 20 years ago as I am now. So I always try and be friendly, try and be respectful. If I know someone, there's we talk about knowing where the line is. There is a line with people like Anthony Daniels. You can have a laugh and a joke, but you can't be too familiar, because that's not cool. So it's just kind of knowing where the line is with people. But that's a long answer to a very short question.
No, not at all. I mean, the more explanation you give, the more fascinating and the more questions that I come up with now. So, I mean, honestly, you're exactly right on the money, and that I've noticed that in kind of the content creation side of things, where some people get a little too pushy with things that they want, and there is a lot of nuance to these things, and I kind of wonder, do you prefer the more grassroots style of networking that it was back then to now, where, again, it's kind of as nice and convenient as it can be for everything to just be, we'll set everything up for you, we'll do this interview, whatever. Does that take away from any of the excitement of interviewing these people?
That's a good one, because there's a weird line in that. I think for me as well now, having been in and around it for a while, there's the demon on my shoulder thinking, oh, come on, they've got to know who I am by now. I've this is like 800 interviews in or whatever I've done by now. I do keep track of it. But and then another part of me knows very well that I'm not owed a thing, and I'm not on anyone's payroll. I'm an independent contractor, if you like. So I'm a contributor to all of these things. No, I'm not signed up. I don't work for anybody specifically. So there is an element of, I've been, not that I'm flavour of the month, but if I want to use that phrase, I've been flavour of the month for 20 years, and the next person who comes in charge of that whole endeavour might go, let's just move on from Mark. We've used Mark forever. So I'm not owed a thing. This could stop tomorrow. So on one hand, I do kind of like the old way, but that was kind of me working my way through it and getting a bit of a name and a bit of trust. I'd like to think a bit of trust with people, because I don't throw zingers at folks. I've never done that. That's not my MO at all. I know it is for some, but it's not for me. If some people want to address a sticky topic, fine, let's go there. But I'm not going to put that in front of anyone. I just want to talk about Star Wars in a positive way.
Yes.
I celebrate the love, as the old Ewok song used to go. So that's my sort of thing. So if tricky topics come along, yeah, fine, let's go over there. But I'm not bringing that up. So I think there's people who know what I do, and a lot of these people know each other. That they kind of know I'm not going to give them a massively hard time. I just want to eke out the fun stories. I want to get the little thing that they forgot they did on Return of the Jedi 40 years ago. That's the thing I'm going for. So it's a really good question, actually. Yeah, it was a bit more grassroots, but there's never a moment here in 2025 where I'm under any illusion that this could go in a heartbeat. So I'm always trying to keep it as honest as I can.
Good. I can even tell just by how you're answering these questions. You have a system. You have a passion behind this, and you found a system that works. And it definitely has kept you relevant in this industry for so long now. Have you ever had an interview where you're trying not to nerd out and be starstruck by the person you're interviewing, because I know for me, last December I got to meet Sam Witwer at GalaxyCon Columbus, and that was the first time I'd ever been to like a convention to meet a celebrity or something. And you're standing in line for 2.5 hours, and I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what I'm gonna say. Like, I'm gonna be cool. And then I get to the front of the line, and I had to really remind myself not to freeze up and forget what I was saying. And I feel like, especially if you're a big Star Wars fan, I feel like that can really be easy to do. So I guess 2 questions: has it happened, and how do you manage that if it's happened?
Weirdly, because we're both ultra passionate fans, so weirdly I've been in scenarios where I've thought, if I really put my foot in it, or if I don't get this going in the right way, or I come over as a bit too eager, this could go south. Luckily, I've jinxed myself now. It's going to happen. My next interview is going to be a car crash. But luckily, it hasn't happened. The one I also wrote for StarTrek.com and Star Trek Magazine, so I had a very fortunate situation. I think I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I was the last person to interview Shatner for the official magazine before it closed.
Wow!
And when I went into that one, I mean, there's big names, and in the realms of Star Trek, Shatner is Harrison Ford, Mark. He's huge, right up there. And I had 10 minutes with him talking about the movies, and I thought, oh dear, this could be, because it's William Shatner. And I've got to say, I sat down and he shook my hand. He fist bumped me when I walked in. We did a 10-minute interview, which was lovely. And when I left, he shook my hand. So I took that as that he thought that was okay, because start off with a fist bump, leave with a handshake. I thought that was okay. I was worried about that, and within 30 seconds, we were just banging questions backwards and forwards. In terms of Star Wars, I can't honestly think of one that's been like that. I do a lot of stuff on stage. I do a lot of interviews on stage at London Film and Comic Con. We had a show here called Andmore quite recently, which was an Andor behind the scenes show. And chatting to some of the ILM guys who are, I know a little bit about a lot of stuff. So I know a little bit about the special effects. I know a little bit about the collecting scene. I know enough to have a conversation with anyone about anything related to Star Wars, pretty much. But I'm no expert. And so it's wonderful writing for ILM.com now, because I'm learning so much more and the history of it. But they're not expecting me to know how to do special effects. They just want me to have a general view of the work. So talking to those guys, I was a little bit, they go deep into the weeds. I could be out of my depth here. But they were great, and it was just a nice flow. And I've interviewed them since for the magazine. And so there's been some fortunate circumstances like that. But I'd love to tell you there was a moment where I couldn't get my words out. But actually, no. But it'll happen, and you'll be the first to know.
I hope it doesn't happen. And if it does, I hope it's a good story out of it. But
yeah.
So you've written for both official channels and for more what we would consider fan channels.
Yeah.
So I know there's obviously a difference in the way that they operate, in the behind the scenes with that. What is maybe, if you don't have a favorite between the two, what would be your favorite thing about each? Because I know that it's two completely different realms. I know with the fan channels especially, you have the opportunity to be a lot more opinionated, and have a lot more of your personal bias thrown into the articles.
That's a good point. So with Fantha Tracks, for example, so the new stuff, like I said, new stuff starting on Jedi News. I sort of ported that across to Jedi News. They were more of a collecting focused site, and they became a general news site when I came on board. So I kind of ran the news desk, if you like, for 7 years, and then moved across to Fantha, and that is completely a news site with the pods and all the other stuff that filters in. So that is quick, immediate, one paragraph, a bit of blurb, here's the link. It's a much snappier, quicker thing. So if you come to Fantha, for example, you're probably going to see 7, 8, 9, 10 articles a day, independent of the socials and all the other stuff we're doing. It's a busy site with a lot going on and different people throwing a hand in. So that's its own thing. So I've got, over the years, I think with Fantha now, I think I'm at about 17,000 posts in the last sort of 7.5 years, which is more than I did with Jedi News in a similar amount of time. Yeah. So I do post a lot. With the official stuff, let's say when I was writing for StarWars.com, that was great because they would pick on certain topics, or they would kind of have a feel of things that were going on at the time. So I would pitch ideas like, obviously being in the UK, a lot of American collectors aren't so familiar with what was going on in the UK. So I did a series called Star Wars in the UK. So it was what it was like in the UK in the 70s, 80s, 90s, some of the collectible stuff you could get.
Right.
I did a series on the first 12 issues of the Star Wars Weekly, and the sort of the adverts you would get in there, and just the vibe of 70s UK magazines. It was very different to what you guys got in the States. So there was a different focus. It was much more in depth. It was a deeper dive thing. That's a lot of fun. That's more like the sort of stuff I'm doing with on some of the some of the ILM.com and Skywalker stuff, going out there a little bit more. But for me, it's generally based around an interview. It's rare with any of the official stuff, like Insider. Most of the stuff I do for Insider is interviewing somebody. So the latest issue, 233, was with Kiriana Kratter from Skeleton Crew, who we had on stage with us in Japan for Celebration on the podcast.
That's too cool.
And she's so nice. If you ever get the chance to speak to her, please do. She's lovely.
That's
and
awesome.
Steve Evans from Hasbro, the design director from Hasbro, who I've known for years and years, but I'd never interviewed him at any great length. Anyway,
Really?
Briefly. Yeah. I'd interviewed him at Farthest From last year. He came across for Farthest From and did a presentation, but and we spoke for 10 minutes. But this was a proper in-depth thing for the mag, which is in the latest issue, and that was great as well. And I managed to get a quote from Kathleen Kennedy for the BFI screening of Star Wars. We got that in the Launchpad section, which was kind of cool. So they're very, very different, but I like the variety. So I get twitchy. I mean, genuinely twitchy if I don't post something every day. There's even on holiday, unless Brian, I'll run the site with Brian and Matt. So Matt takes care of the social side. Brian is very hands-on tech, behind the scene, all the boring stuff nobody ever sees, but your site would die without it. He does that, absolutely. And then he does our Sunday night show, similar to you. He does a Sunday night video show called Good Morning Tatooine. So he will say to me when I'm on holiday, Mark, don't take the laptop. I'm running the site for 2 weeks. You need a break. Just leave it alone. But even when I'm riding on Thunder Mountain or whatever, I'm thinking, I should be posting to the site. I've got this weird little thing going off. So as long as they're getting a couple of things on a day, I'm okay. But they're very different. But I wouldn't want to pick between the two. I love them equally because they're so different, but they're still completely Star Wars to me.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, because when you said that you get twitchy, like I felt myself through that statement, because my fiance, God love her, she gets on me all the time. She's always like, "You're always posting," because I'll be like, "Oh, it's been like a day. I didn't post yesterday. I have to make sure I get something out for tomorrow." And she'll be like, "It's okay. You're still posting way more than anybody else." I'm like, "No, but it's there's always a goal to reach," and I'm very blessed that my YouTube channel and my following has grown so quickly over the last year that it's been around. But a lot of that too comes with trial and error and realizing, what works. And that's another thing with social media is realizing how rapidly trends change and, new developments happen, and you either adapt or you die in this environment right now on the internet. So you have to constantly be ready to the United States Marine Corps motto is improvise, adapt, and overcome. So you have to be ready constantly to be light on your feet and be ready to pivot with the next trend. I did hear you say, you talk about Steve Evans, and obviously me, huge collector. I don't know how you would know from what's behind me here, but
no idea.
Huge into the Star Wars toys and collecting, and that is really my vice. Is my dad was into Star Wars collecting when Power of the Force came out. He was getting two of each, one to rock, one to stock, and then I was pretty much born into Star Wars toys especially, and I've always been bitten by the bug, especially with Hasbro toys. So you said Steve Evans, I'm like, oh man. So you did the article with him on the latest HasLab, correct?
No, it was actually we talked about various things to do, and
yes.
I think HasLab was one of the things we thought we might touch on, but the focus was actually, because this is something he talked about in his discussion, it was how people don't realize not that a lot of work goes into making a figure, but quite how much work goes in, and how many hands come into it. So it was basically from concept to completion of an action figure. So he took any random vintage collection figure, and how do you take that from going, we're going to make a Lula figure, to, there you go, Walmart, go and sell it. It was the whole process and all the different work that goes into it, all the different stages, and where you push the green button to progress on this, that, and the other. And it was fascinating because I kind of knew in the most basic terms, but this goes granular really into how it all works.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. It was interesting as well because Steve's a bit like me, he'll talk and he'll go off on one, he'll go away, he'll go over there. And his love for Star Wars is really like right at the front of his conversation. So he can get quite emotional when he's talking about these things. And so it was actually taking the conversation that we'd had and annotating it down and then sort of moving it into the right order and then going back to Steve going, is that the right? That's correct, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And just making sure everything was okay, which we did because it went to print. But it was fascinating. And I don't think people realize quite not the fact that obviously Disney is the horse leading the car. Disney would say, we want these figures to come out to go with this new product, not Hasbro saying, we just want to make this. It doesn't work that way. It's an entertainment property. It's a collaborative thing. So there are certain things that Hasbro obviously are pitching towards. At the moment, it's Return to Tatooine, it's Geonosis next year, and then Mando and Grogu's out. We've got Starfighter coming, and it's the 50th anniversary. So we know that the immediate future for Hasbro is going to be really, really busy. But it's just making sure for them, it's like picking up the figures that might not have come in previous waves. Let's fill out that scene. Let's fill out this. So they do have benchmarks to aim for, waypoints to aim for. So it's way more intricate, I think, than a lot of people. It doesn't matter to collectors. They want what they want, and they want it when they want it, and that's Hasbro's job to fulfill that as best they can. But I say as a casual collector, I'm quite a casual collector. I didn't realize all the steps, so it's given me a kind of a new appreciation really for what Steve does and actually for what Hasbro have to do in the broader sense.
Yeah, I actually have this guy. Well, go figure, it's Blitz. I have him on hand right here from the vintage collection. But he's been my little desk buddy lately. No particular reason at all, But no. This was the article where Steve also shared with you that sketch, correct? That was that one. Yeah. I consume so many articles and everything every day that even when I am like right before we sat down for this, I'm like, I have all my ducks in a row. Like I know I have all this pulled up and this pulled up. Even still, it's like in one ear out the other sometimes with myself. But
there's so much content though. This is the thing. There's so much.
So that's something I wanted to ask you about. What is the changes you've noticed in how journalism has evolved? Not only do we have social media that's a lot quicker paced, everything's a lot faster, and you have to be on your toes like we were just talking about. But taking that and also looking at this era of Disney Plus, which I would say that this era is just now coming to a close with the constant stream of show after show after show after show. Whereas, juxtaposed to back when you were with Star Wars Insider, and looking at when the Clone Wars was coming out, it was one show. It aired on Cartoon Network every Friday. You had one season at a time, and it was really the only new project that Star Wars and Lucasfilm were working on, as opposed to now where we have like 7, 8, 9, 10 projects. Some are like dead in the water. Some are in officially announced, and then you don't hear anything. And how is that different from how it was before, aside from the obvious ways, and how do you juggle so many different things?
When Clone Wars was coming and it landed in 2008, the only other thing that was kind of on the go was, well, back then it was the classic old, you had a film every 3 years. So we were very used to coasting off the back of the previous film for a couple of years and then waiting for the next one. Coming off Sith, that was it. Circle was complete. No more Star Wars. We had Celebration Europe here for the first time in 2007, and Steve Sanswick came over. It's the first time I met Steve, and Filoni came over and talked about the Clone Wars. And you mentioned Sam Witwer. He was over to talk about Force Unleashed. And so the focus then was, we've got the Clone Wars coming. We thought we'd got Star Wars Underworld coming as well. So we thought we had got a live action show, which obviously never happened. But then there was heavy focus on Force Unleashed, and the performers that were in that, Natalie Cox and people like that, there was heavy focus on them. Dark Horse were throwing a lot of stuff out at the time. So the focus was every bit as busy as it is now, but focused at different things. I think now, or certainly the last few years, as you quite rightly say, you had that tiny overlap between Mandalorian season 1 and Rise of Skywalker's sort of promotional era. and you get Rise of Skywalker done, and none of us for a second thought we'd be in 2025 and not have a film. That's kind of shocking to think that it's been that long, but grateful that we've only got to wait another 6 or 7 months for Mando and Grogu.
Yeah,
I think things will change a lot by the time that film comes out, because we notice, for example, in the site, and when I say the site, I mean Fantha Tracks as a thing, because we're quite old school, because I've come from websites and done websites for 30 years, and so to me that's the hub. It's where you get your news, the socials filter in, the video channel filters in, the podcast filter in. If you want to find anything that we do, go to fanthatracks.com. I understand and realise, really, to your point about the moving of the media that we consume and the way we take it in, is that websites aren't what they used to be. They're not the place where everything happens anymore. That's an old sort of hangover for me, and it probably always will be, because where else are you going to collate everything unless you sort of, it's the home for everything. But in terms of the content, as you say, now we have so much, we have a season with 8 episodes. To me, I mean, if I had any choice in the matter, and I understand this is not the way of the world in a TikTok generation with an attention span of 30 seconds, I would put an episode out every other week, and I'd have the Star Wars show on, and I'd have Andy and Anthony on, and I'd have Kristen Baver doing stuff, and that, to me, I'd have all those guys pushing stuff out. One thing I do miss from StarWars.com that we used to have back in the day, for example, was you would go on StarWars.com and Pablo Hidalgo would be on there, and Bonnie Burton would be on there, and there would be kind of Lucasfilm, not characters, that's not the right word, but personalities. Steve Sansweet was on there, and those guys, and you would know Mary Franklin's posted a piece, and those people would be the face of the company to a degree. And I know that Lucasfilm pre-2012 and Lucasfilm post-2012 are inherently different things. One was an independent production company that George ran however he wanted to, and after that, and of course the Star Wars show came way after that, Matt Martin set that all up, that's a Disney IP, if you like, and it's part of a broader, much bigger monster, and I say monster in the most reverent term, but it is a different way of doing things, and I do wish that they could, and I understand sometimes why they can't, but it does bug me when all episodes, like Visions, we've got season 3 Visions coming, they'll drop all the episodes on one day. To me, I'd have one episode a week for 9 weeks. The same with Andor. There's, any of the shows, just one a week, stretch it out. We want this content. We want to be talking about it all week. It used to bug me back in the day when, I'll pick an example, when Solo came out, the massively underrated Solo came out.
Yes,
and
yes.
If you watched the Star Wars show back then, every episode for months, it was brought to you by Therm Scissor Punch, and that was like all they would talk about. It was like, Ben Quadraneros was the flavour of the month forever and a day, and so certain characters would have this thing. Porgs were everywhere, I think we're kind of weirdly missing that now. I like the fact that it was just a thing, and things people were talking about this episode for a chunk of time, whereas now sometimes I think they throw it out too quick. So there's an immediacy that I kind of get, because it is a different world. Mm-hmm. But I do miss the chewing over of it. I do miss the sort of letting things soak in a bit, which is why I wish we had a film every 3 years. That being said, Mando and Grogu in May, the following May Starfighter comes out in 27. We got the Star Wars re-release like a month before that. And I think once we're back on the screen with those 2 films, then we're off to the races again, because cinema is just inherently a bigger deal than TV, even though in terms of production, there's very little. I'll tell you a very quick story. I was fortunate enough to be on the House of the Dragon set earlier in the week.
Wow, that's cool.
And what? Yeah, it was very unexpected. And walking around the sets and seeing the scale of it and the money they're spending and just the craft was mind blowing. And I had to keep pinching myself to think, this is a TV show. This isn't cinema. This is a TV show. But the way they make TV now is you could very easily throw that up on an IMAX screen, not maybe an IMAX, but on a big screen, and it would just look phenomenal. It's a different world, and we, as and I waggle the air quotes, journalist, we have to kind of race to keep up with it to a degree, because things do move quicker, things are pacier, and I ain't getting any younger. I mean, I'm very conscious that I'm in my mid-50s nearly now, so I'm not going to be as I'm not the sort of person that a 20-year-old or a teenager or somebody that kind of age, they're not going to come to me for their Star Wars news. They'll probably go to yourself, because back in the day, back in the day, there wasn't that kind of
Right. Right.
sort of area to go to. You know what I mean? It's slightly different for us as a unit as Fantha Tracks because we're all kind of in our 40s and 50s. It's a slightly different beast, but the passion's still the same. So you've just got to kind of move with it as much as you can, and we all find our audience, and as long as it's fun, then it's worthwhile doing.
Yeah, I think I've found, I've been saying this a lot on like my podcast and a lot of my videos and stuff, is that I'm really happy that the Disney Plus stuff has slowed down, because that was part of it. You brought it up, was I can't keep up with all the content. I feel like by the time I finished watching Bad Batch season 3, okay, well now I'm hurrying up and I'm moving to, there was a point, I think it was Bad Batch season 3 was coming out at the same time as The Mandalorian season 3, and it was that was an overlap. And I feel like now, Andor season 2 finished, that was phenomenal in my opinion, and I'm, while we're waiting for the next show, which I think is Vision season 3 in October here, and that's a smaller release anyway, but I'm really excited that I can go back and rewatch stuff, and I'm really taking my time now and digesting, because that's one of my favorite things about this fandom. Is this is one of the only fandoms that, like you said, Therm Scissor Punch, or Hermie Yodel, Ifant Mon, like all these like little tiny little characters. We know their names, we know their backstories, we know the stormtrooper that hits his head on the door in the Death Star, which is then referenced in the Clone Wars, where Captain Rex hits his head off a pipe, and it's. You have to know, or even a good one of my favorites is, I think it was Mandalorian season 2, Jeans guy. The guy where they had to edit him out after the episode came out because the set guy was on the side there. That, I feel like there's not a lot of other fandoms that are like Star Wars in that way, where we are all so fanatical. And I'm really glad that things are starting to space out just a little bit more, so that we can get back to that analyzing and looking at the fine details, and you can notice the little, like, oh, there was a costume defect right there, or oh, there was this, there was that, because that is the beauty of this fandom in particular.
That is such a good point, because one of the things we StarWars.com used to have the blogs, the official Star Wars blogs back in the mid 2000s, and again, it was one of those places where if you wanted to kind of interact with people like Bonnie Burton or Pablo or people like that, or Pete Vilma, they were on there and they were posting their own stuff and their own thoughts, and we as fans could go on and post ours. And it was such a lovely, and it's like you said, pre-social media as we know it. This is sort of 20 years ago, and that was where you could put your thoughts out. And if people didn't agree with you, they would very politely tell you their thoughts, and it wasn't combative, it wasn't competitive. It was just, well, I think this, well, I think that. Okay. And I love that. I miss that so much. And so, the analytical side of it is so valuable, because I think one of the things about Star Wars, fandom is definitely the lifeblood of Star Wars. And there's been periods of Star Wars where there hasn't been any new content. Good grief. I mean, Jedi comes out, you get Caravan of Courage, Battle for Endor, 2 seasons of Ewoks, 1 season of Droids, and then nothing for until really the special editions,
the Dark Times, I
was weird about that, because for me, West End Games started in 87, and so I used to play D&D back in the day, so we moved straight onto D6 West End Games. So we were 3 nights a week for like 7 years, so it was no dark time for us. But I take your point, it was for everybody else, it was the dark times. But so it was the busiest time, and so the most interesting times and the most interesting things to talk about. So I do think to have that moment, that pause, that time to step back a little bit and soak it in, because sometimes it's coming at us so fast. With Andor, for example, which is just like top tier Star Wars. There's been certain episodes of that were just so good. But next week, the next episode came out. So you really wanted to soak up and chew over and really look at what we're getting as Star Wars fans. Look at this. This is amazing. I mean, Rogue One was a joy.
Yes.
That just butts into A New Hope so perfectly. And now we get Andor ahead of that. It's like, this is insanely good. So I do think sometimes we're getting top content too fast. And I do like, as you just say, I like the time to chew it over, to throw ideas around. I do miss that.
Yeah. When you talk about Andor, I remember, because they did for season 2, they dropped 3 episodes a week. And I remember watching the Gorman Massacre, And my fiance and I were sitting there, like, we're all tearing up, choked up, like, at the end of that episode. So it's just such powerful storytelling.
Yeah.
And all right, time to watch the next one. But we sat there, we let the credits roll, and we just sat there for a good 10, 15 minutes before we went on to the next episode, because it was just such powerful storytelling. I've gone back and I've watched that episode a couple times since its release now, because again, we actually have time to digest this content now, and every time it hits me just as emotionally as it did the first. And it's man, Andor is something special, especially for us adult fans. Andor is really something special. Do you have a favorite of the like a personal favorite of the Disney Plus era? We have Mandalorian, Bad Batch. We have technically Clone Wars Season 7, although I consider that to still be its own era. We have I would lump Rebels in with this, kind of the Disney era of Star Wars. We have Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor. Do you have a favorite?
It's one of those. I think it depends on the time of day almost. I mean, I get it. Andor is very hard to deny as not just top quality Star Wars. It's just top quality television. So Andor, I think, and you hear. I listened to Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. I think fascinating podcast. The video podcast is brilliant, and he had Jessica Williams, who's Harrison Ford's co-star on Shrinking, on. And they just go in the middle of this interview, just go off nerding off about Andor for 5 minutes. So you see it seeping into the wider world, but I couldn't imagine them doing the same about Kenobi, for example, even though I really enjoy Kenobi. So there's been nothing that I've not enjoyed. There's been certainly certain things I've enjoyed more than others. So I would say one massively overlooked season is Skeleton Crew. I thought Skeleton Crew was so much fun.
Yes, I love that show.
Brilliant. You weren't around for the 80s, but it was so the 80s, and just that whole E.T. Goonies vibe. I know they said that a million times, but it really, really was. So that was wonderful and very enjoyable. Andor, again, fantastic. And for the animation, for me, you mentioned it, Bad Batch. I missed the Bad Batch like crazy, and me and my wife watched it together, and we were so surprised how into the characters that we got. Considering we'd seen back Clone Force 99, as you say, in Season 7 Clone Wars, and they were a concept from way back. I think they're throwing the animatics up at one of the celebrations back in the day. So to see those guys come back, and for us to get so invested and care when Tech goes out of it, and and just reading the recent Sanctuary novel and just going through that, and Tech's in there, and it's like, oh, I miss that guy. It would have been a cliche to save him or bring him back. So I'm glad they didn't, but there's a little part of you wanted them to,
Yeah,
like I'm still waiting for Darth Maul's legs to come back. The top half came back. I want the legs to come back. So I think their hit ratio has been pretty good, to be fair.
I agree.
Considering George isn't involved, and in the same way Star Trek enjoyed some fantastic seasons. I mean, really fantastic seasons post Roddenberry being involved. I think he was involved in Next Gen up to seasons 2 or 3, I think, and then others took over, but there was enough of a blueprint for them to take that on, and technology moves forward and it's next level stuff. With Star Wars, as long as you're staying true to George's concepts and keeping the style, there's just a dash of Macquarie. As long as it's in there, there's certain tent poles that make it work. I think you should be okay, because I don't think anyone's expecting everything to be The Empire Strikes Back. I don't think anyone's that naive. And if everything was that good, it becomes there's nothing down. Special. Yeah, It does. It really does. You need that. You need that. So
there. I would say for me, obviously, I'm a Clone Wars kid through and through. I mean, the mascot of my YouTube channel is a clone trooper. My dad obviously was our show that we got to watch when I was a kid. You'd put on Cartoon Network here in the States on Friday nights, and I remember back in 2010, I want to say my dad actually got to meet Dave Filoni because we live about half an hour away from Dave Filoni's alma mater, Edinburgh University. So Dave Filoni came down, did a speech, like a presentation, and my dad, who's also a member of the 501st Legion, he got to meet Dave and talk to him. And I remember before he went, he said, "Tommy, do you have one question you want me to ask Dave?" And I said, "Well, I need you to ask him if we're going to have a Wookiee Jedi in the Clone Wars." And this was, at this point, they were on like season 2 or 3, and then later on in the show, my dad asked him about it, and Dave did the thing that Dave does where he goes, I don't know, I don't. So, and then we got Gunji, in the Clone Wars, and in my heart of hearts, I believe that was influenced by my dad's conversation with Dave, and then Gungi showed up in the Bad Batch, and now as an adult fan, I have such a deep connection with such a minor character that for me that was really special. So the Bad Batch, obviously, I'm obsessed with Clone Troopers. I'm obsessed with the Clone Wars animated show. And for the Bad Batch to kind of marry my two favorite things, Clone Troopers and Gungi, I was like, oh, this is the best I could have ever had.
But don't you think, you say about Gungi and say minor character, but in Star Wars, because like I say, I'm lucky, I get to interview a lot of people, and some are, you know, known people and behind the scenes folks. And I was at Pinewood not that long ago interviewing some of the special effects team. So visual effects get a lot of love, creature effects get a lot of love, special effects don't. They sit somewhere in the middle. So I was speaking to some of the guys there about different stuff. But one of the things I find at these conventions, you know, get some actor who, you know, a background character or had one line or no lines, and they're very self-effacing. And I think it's an actor thing. It's like, you know, it's just a tiny little role. Mate, there's no small roles in Star Wars. There's literally no small roles. And I think it's the only franchise, maybe Potter. I think maybe Potter's the only other one where every element, you know, is you know, very much loved. But Star Wars is so much bigger and older and vaster than Potter at this stage. There's no small roles in Star Wars, so which I think is part of the joy of it as well.
Yeah, I think, and that's kind of another thing is that obviously I was shaped by the prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars. I know it's been really fun to see my generation grow up, and now that we are young adults in our mid to late 20s and 30s now. We have so much more of a voice, and I've seen that reflected in the content coming out. Like for me, one of my favorites of the new Disney shows is Ahsoka, because I got to grow up with Ahsoka. I was 7, like very much how you were 7 when the original trilogy was coming out. I was 7 years old when the Clone Wars movie came to theaters, and I was hooked on that era, and I got to grow with Ahsoka. And I actually just recently did a podcast episode where I talked about how Ahsoka dealing with a different set of issues in her adult life in the Ahsoka series has actually related a lot more to me in ways that I never expected, teenage Ahsoka to relate to me when I was a kid growing up with her. I didn't expect her character to continue to, I guess reflect on me. And I have been inspired by her character throughout my life. I also got to meet some of the voice actors that, you talked about no minor characters here. So I just wanted to throw in ICC Con is in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a fan-run Star Wars convention every single year. Love that convention. Last year they had a little bit of a prequel voice actor focus. So they had Andy Succombe, voice of Watto. They had Lewis McLeod, voice of Sebulba. And they also had Rena Owen, the voice of Taun We, the Kaminoan. I got to meet all of them. I got all their autographs on, their original action figures. And one thing that I heard from them, all 3 of them, was just how appreciative they were of the love for their characters and the movies that they were a part of. And especially, they said, seeing it from, because they said, George always told us, the adults might not like it, but the kids that are growing up with it, give it 20 years and those kids will be, showing their appreciation. And just seeing that deep appreciation from them about, getting those interactions with fans. And even for me, I told Andy Succombe, I said, I quote Watto almost daily. My fiance, she hates it. I'll be walking around the house just yelling Watto lines around the house. But yeah, it's fun. It's in the same way that people get caught up on Garandan or, a character, I'll bring him up again, like, Hermie Yodel is one of my favorite Jabba denizens, the same way that your generation gets caught up on those little characters. My generation has attached themselves to again, in the grand scheme of things, minor, but you do bring up a great point. They're not really minor characters, are they?
They're not. Yeah. And when Last Jedi came out and Akbar dies when the bridge gets blown out by Kylo's missile, and obviously that scene's it's a Leia scene, really.
Yeah.
But in that moment, Admiral Akbar's died, and so a lot of folks, sort of my age, were like, "Oh my God, that's Admiral Akbar, that's Tim Rose. That's look at the making the Jedi is all over that thing, and that's a big deal." And loads of people were like, "Who cares? He's a background character." I thought, wow, you are not getting Star Wars if you think that's a background character, because through the comics and just the novels, especially the Bantam era, the post post Heir to the Empire, when then they really went crazy expanding stuff. Major characters. So if you're reading or not reading, consuming the broader scope of Star Wars, and do what they would like you to do now, is to consider everything is the story. So you watch it on film, or you watch it on TV, or you read a book, or you play a video game. Cal Kestis, who's just turned up in, the new Lego series, so all these little things all filtering together. And you make a great. Andy Seacombe's brilliant because he's at an event next month, so I should be speaking to him next month.
That's
and cool. He kind of didn't do a lot for a while, and then he's kind of come back onto the scene, and he's at a lot of shows now. And it doesn't take long for him to start doing his Watto, and talking about how George directed him. Of course, he was on the set. You talk to Lewis McLeod, he was in the recording booth with George, like Peter Serafinovich was. But Andy was on set. So he was there with Liam Neeson. He acted those scenes and was comped out, and and all the stuff they did. And of course, Watto was basically the testbed for Jar Jar. And personally, I think Watto's a more visually interesting character than Jar Jar. I love Jar Jar.
Oh yeah, I mean, proportions wise, he flies. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more to look at. Yeah,
just interesting, and just the tusks, just to make that work, and just all the little things. So you're right, these guys. And weirdly, Andy's dad was like mega famous over here. Harry Seacombe was a big deal over here back in the 50s and 60s. So he's like a son of a big name in the UK.
Yeah.
And Lewis McLeod, again, is a well-known voice actor over here. So he's been on loads of stuff. So, and Rena Owen was a massive star in New Zealand. So even though these people do the small roles, it's a bit like Katie Sackhoff playing Bo-Katan in Clone Wars, and then coming back to the level that she has now, because obviously Dave and the team modeled the look of Bo-Katan, pretty much on her, but with red hair. So that kind of worked beautifully. So there's some serendipity there, which is a massive part of Star Wars as well, I think.
Yeah, I actually, at that same ICC con this year, Katie Sackhoff showed up just on the Saturday, I believe. It was like Friday night and Saturday, and I got the chance to talk to her. I got her autograph. And that, honestly, I remember being so excited. Again, it all comes from the Clone Wars kid in me.
Yeah.
Knowing that, because I think that Rosario Dawson's a great casting for Ahsoka. I remember, not to get on too much of a tangent, but I actually remember watching her episode in The Mandalorian and in season 2. And it was specifically the moment where she gets on top of the wall and she cuts the bell and she's cutting up the dudes. And she looks at the one goon, and she looks at him and she makes this little smirk. And in that moment, I went, this is literally Ahsoka as I always knew her from my childhood. And I remember I said something on, well, then it was Twitter, but I said something, on Twitter about to Rosario Dawson. She replied to me and said like how much she appreciated hearing that. And then, fast forward to, I guess, juxtaposed to the same level of excitement, if not more, when I found out that Katie Sackhoff got cast as the live action Bo-Katan. And that, I told her that at ICCCon. I was like, that is such a special moment, like, for as a fan, is to see like, yes, this is you perfectly embody this character both physically and through the voice. So it really is it's great that they've done, in my opinion, I think they've done a really, really good job with the castings on these animated characters to live action.
They have. It's tricky, I think. When they were all cast originally, they were cast as voice actors. So you bring in talented voice actors to convey that, because at that point of time, a live action wasn't an option. It was financially, technically, it wasn't an option. So when you come to doing a live action Ahsoka, and you look at Ashley, who's lovely, but she's not. She's tiny, isn't she? Ashley, she's not. She's not physically imposing, and age-wise, and all the other elements wasn't going to work. So doing what they've done, and also what I love is that that Ashley, and she, again, the new Lego show, she's very front and center in that. She's still the voice of Ahsoka. There's never been any deviation. They've not got Rosario in to be the voice of animated Ahsoka. It is Ashley. So I love that we've got that clear break. Whereas, as you say, Katie Sackhoff is in that lovely circumstances. She can do both. So, which isn't the case for everybody. Obviously, Sam Witwer, we've got Shadow Lord coming up. So, he's another one.
Excited.
If they ever go live action again with Maul, I'm pretty sure he's the guy they'll go with as well as the voice. Because he would be great in that part.
Yeah, he really I love watching voice actors in the booth. I was just watching the clip the other day of George going back and forth with Lewis McLeod on
Yeah,
when he's I think it's to Jar Jar says something about Bantha Poodoo, or it might be Anakin.
yeah.
I don't remember. But yeah, Sam Witwer, when I watch him in the booth and he's delivering his lines, he gets so into it. Like, obviously,
Oh yeah.
most voice actors get into it, but he in particular gets so into it in his
Oh
face,
yeah.
and he puts his whole body into it, and that's really what sells a convincing performance like that. And he's another one I remember so specifically. The Clone Wars episode where, Savage Opress goes to Dathomir and he sees Mother Talzin, and she shows on her crystal ball, she says, "Your brother," and it shows Darth Maul's face. I remember I was like probably 10 or 11,
Yeah.
and my dad and our jaws were dropped, and we just stared at each other for like 5 minutes in complete silence. Like,
Yeah.
we were just talking for hours after that. Like, I was up way too late that night. Like, how are they going to bring Darth Maul back? How is that even, how did he possibly? And it's moments like that Star
Yeah.
Wars really, and I think honestly, I can say this from the collecting side. I can say it from the just the general Star Wars media watching side. I can say it from the perspective of even like, people who want to cover Star Wars news and Star Wars current events. I think that a lot of times we tend to lose sight of why we are so in love with the franchise, and
Yeah.
whether it's you just want to get the clicks and you want to be the first one to the punch, or you want to right now it's like phony outrage, and like they call it rage baiting on the
Yeah.
internet right now. Misleading titles and thumbnails to get people to click on your thing. I feel like it really it has the potential to really damage the core of the fandom, when you have to look past that. At heart, we are all that little kid
Yep.
that got to experience Star Wars for the first time, picked their favorite thing, and has become fanatical. And that's why, honestly, the passion of the Star Wars fandom is both its greatest strength and its greatest weakness, in my opinion, because we tend to, as a fandom, it's like you have a sense of ownership over the franchise in a way, because
Yeah.
you're so deeply connected. And that's why I say it's a greatest strength, because we as a fandom, you don't see that with other fandoms. There's people who are super fans with all kinds of stuff, but I would even go as far as to say, like, Star Wars is a lifestyle for people. Like, it's not even like just something they're really into. It's like a second life on top of your day to day.
Yeah, it's really well said, actually.
Yeah.
It really is. It totally is. I mean, there's other fandoms that are passionate. Star Trek at
Absolutely.
the moment is going through it
Absolutely.
with Strange New Worlds. I mean, I love Strange New Worlds because it reminds me of the original series, because you'll get one serious episode, one really goofy episode. That's what the Shatner era stuff was. And so I don't understand the confusion, but you make a great point that you will click on these things, and I fall for it way too often. I read it, I respond, and then delete it because I'm like, oh, this guy's just yanking my chain here. But with Star Wars, and I should know better, with Star Wars, it is. I mean, on Fantha, you asked earlier about how on a fan channel you can be more opinionated.
Yeah.
We tend to be more opinionated on the podcast than on the site. On the site, I try and take a very neutral third person tone. So when I write an article, even though my name's on it, and there's no doubt it's not me, my picture's at the bottom with a little blurb, it's right there. But I don't write it as I think me. There's certain outlets that are me, I think.
Right.
I don't care what you think. I just want the news. So
Right.
I'll make my own decision. So I try and make it as polite or enthusiastic as I can, or want to, or whatever, without being, stupidly over the top about it. But it is really just me sort of going, well, there's this bit of information. You take it away and have a think about it, And I like that in my general news anyway. I don't like the opinionated newscast online. I don't care about your opinion. I don't know how you formulated it, so why does it affect me? But I like to be given the news so I can go away and go, okay, well, and it's a bit like that with Star Wars. And so, and that probably is maybe a little bit antiquated these days, but it's the way I like to do it, because, again, going back to our right at the start of the conversation, even, okay, in fandom, which is very much where I live, I'm allowed an opinion, and I can, say what I want, really. but I do walk between sort of two worlds. I sound like Spock in the original Star Trek film. There is this official stuff that I do. So if I'm too opinionated, if I'm too bitter, not that I am, because I very much live where you just said. I'm still that kid that wants to go and enjoy everything. Everything I read, I want to, even if it's not lighting me up, I'm going to go, that's really well drawn. I like that line. I'll take something away from the things that don't massively do it for me. When the things hit really hard, like Andor or Skeleton Crew, as you said, or numerous other things, lights me up, because the real world's got its own, heaviness and issues, and we've all got stuff going on, and we don't know what's around the corner generally at the moment. It's just that kind of world. And so if you can go to Star Wars and go, well, I'm going to pull out all the good grapes from this one, then I think that's a positive thing. So that's very much the tone that I take. Not everybody on Fantha thinks the same. Some of them, some of the guys want to have a little moan or a little burst about things, and there's a place for that. There's certain shows that we do and pods and live streams and stuff. If they want to vent, it's their opinion. I can't moderate anybody's thoughts. And if ever anybody came to me and said that, I said, look, he's totally entitled to his opinion. But yeah, that's the way I choose to sort of consume and then sort of pass on, if you like, the news through Fantha. That's the way I like to do it.
That's so a couple things on that. So I did want to, I meant to say this earlier when you brought up Skeleton Crew. Star Wars means something different to everybody, and there's very different much. Star Wars projects. For me, I really love Skeleton Crew just as a show, but one of my favorite movies of all time is The Goonies. And obviously, everybody knows Skeleton Crew is very reminiscent of that style of film. Yeah. My godfather, who passed away a couple years ago now, going on, he passed away from brain cancer, and so but his favorite movie with me was The Goonies. And I remember for my birthday a couple years in a row, he'd buy me a Chunk Truffle Shuffle T-shirt that I'd wear all the time, and nice. So I got to get those same vibes that I got from watching The Goonies through Skeleton Crew, and it was like Luke Skywalker's line, "No one's ever really gone." That's a line that I love to live by, and I try to keep it in mind, day to day. And I really, really loved Skeleton Crew, specifically because it brought back for me a lot of those nostalgic feelings of my childhood. Even though I didn't grow up in the 80s, I got to experience a movie from that era with my godfather, and it reminds me of all the great memories that I've had with him. When we talk about the way that we convey information, when I do videos on my YouTube channel, say I'm covering a current event or a topic or something, I always make sure to say, if I'm sharing information, either this is where I got this from, or this is how I came up with this. If I'm doing, sometimes like with action figures, you do number crunching. Okay, how do we get to this price? And I'll say, okay, well, here's the resource you can use. You can do the same calculations I did. Here's how I got why this thing is priced at this number. And then I'll say, here's my thoughts. After I present the information, that a lot of times in my videos, I'll say, and here is what my personal take on this is and why. I think what we've gotten into kind of very messily, and again, this kind of comes from just a lot of people have opinions on things, and it's all about the way you give your opinion. And some people think that they're self-proclaimed experts on things. I just because I'm a Star Wars super fan doesn't mean that I'm I don't have a degree in Star Wars or anything. But even though I think I should, but but it's this it's the way people use their words. Be careful of the way you say things, especially if you have a following online, because you can really easily misconstrue a narrative or give people the wrong idea of something. So I think it honestly, and I've always felt this way about, like you said, writing articles, newscasters. Like you said, I don't care what the news reporter has to say about their personal thoughts on the news. I just want to hear the news and then decide for myself how I feel about it. If I want to hear someone's opinion, I'll watch a talk show. It's like exactly. You said, if I want to hear your opinion, then I'll watch a podcast, or I'll watch this, that, and the third. But I think it's very important to make sure you share a distinction between this is my opinion and or just saying, hey, here's some data to add to this conversation. Here's how I got this. Here's where this article I'm going to talk about. Here's where you can find this article, so that you can help people intelligently form their own opinions.
Yeah, I think that's very important, especially in Star Wars, where because there is so much content now, and because, as you say, it's become so weaponized. I would say
That's
social
a good word
media.
for it.
Yeah, social media should be. I mean, again, I've said it before. 20 years ago, we couldn't have. Well, you were 20 years ago, but we couldn't have this conversation. Technically, we couldn't do it, but now we can. We're thousands of miles apart. We're having a live as we go conversation. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Social media has when you get into threads and there's fun stuff, and you got some like fun video, and there's all the nice responses, and you go, "That's social media. That's social in the best sense." It's not social media not 90%, let's say 75% of the time. And I can't tell you where I came up with that number. It just came out of my head. But 75%. And so I would call it anti-social media, because it is just generally just people bashing on each other, just throwing out hateful stuff, and especially when we're in the realms of Star Wars, when we should be, and again, I said it earlier, celebrate the love. We should be celebrating this because, okay, I'm twice your age. I'm working out the numbers pretty much. Even you have no right, really, to be so in love with a show that was made for 10-year-old kids. I'm 54. I've got no ownership beyond my 11th birthday of being so into Star Wars. But some magic somewhere, and I rank the magic of Star Wars along with whatever the Beatles did, along with whatever Spielberg does. It's up there. I don't know if they'll ever be able to figure out how it works, because there's too many random factors, and you couldn't bottle it if you wanted to. So thank goodness we've got it. And I'm riding this train until I come off the track. This is me. This is my thing until I'm done. Nothing's going to stop this. Because if it was going to stop this, it would have stopped it at some point. So I'm here for the long haul. I'm grateful for that. I'm really grateful for that. And even though there's, as you mentioned, the dark times, there's times and periods where it ebbs and flows. I think as long as you kind of keep your finger in there, dip your toe in there, stick with it. Okay, I'm weirdly, I wouldn't say fanatical. That's the wrong word, but I'm probably too into it, and I'm posting about it every day, and I live in these Roosevelt shirts, and there's always something going on. I'm off to a wedding at the weekend. One of the actors from Force Awakens, and it's her wedding, and so we're going to the wedding reception.
That's cool.
So there's things like that we do. All these wonderful offshoots of things. I got to know somebody, I won't name him, but I got to know somebody in a band through a mutual friend, and the connection was Star Wars. And we're off to see them next week. So there's all these lovely offshoots of the fandom and being into Star Wars that actually beautifully broaden your horizons, expand your friendships. And so on one hand, whilst it is a bit of a beast sometimes, you and me wouldn't be talking if it wasn't for that kind of networking. So there's a lot to be thankful for.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of this fandom and this community is everyone that's in my wedding party, save a couple people, are people that I met through Star Wars. Like that, it's like you said, that you make long-lasting, real friendships and relationships through this fandom, and that's something that it makes sense. Star Wars is a franchise of found family. It's a franchise of love over hate. It's a franchise of sticking to what's good and what's right, and seeing the consequences of when you lean into what's wrong and what's unjust. And I think that because of that, like we see it time and time again. It's a great moral compass as a franchise to grow up in. And when you were talking about the difference in like the generational gap and stuff, I think for me, one of my favorite things, just to reference the 501st Legion costuming group, which if you didn't know is a nonprofit. That's what they tell you to say. So we did a Star Wars night for a hockey game for our local hockey team in my city, and I'm walking around in my Blitz costume. I have my Clone Wars animated Blitz costume. And I had so many kids. Keep in mind, Clone Wars has been out we're going on 20 years now. In 2028, it'll be 20 years old, which is crazy to think about. But, I'm walking around, and I had both adults my age and 7-year-olds coming up to me and knowing the name of the specific clone trooper that I was. Blitz has like 30 seconds of screen time and like 2 voice lines in all of Star Wars. And I had little kids coming up to me with napkins and a pen asking me for my autograph because they wanted an autograph from a clone trooper. So I had to on the fly make up like, what would this clone trooper's autograph look like? So I wrote out with like his CT number and everything, a little autograph, and it was just like moments like that. That is why I do that. That is why I troop. That's why I'm so into this fandom. It's even stuff like I post an action figure review. Like I just did a review of the new Christmas Stormtrooper. So silly, but I get people all the time comment, "Hey man, your enthusiasm for collecting has brought me back into it," because we can get caught up in all that negativity on the social media. We can get caught up in the venomous, whether it's gatekeeping or, there's so many different ways you could talk about the negative stuff. But, all it takes is one person to just share the passion and not be in the weeds of the negativity. I've had people say that I've helped them find their passion in collecting, and I've had people say that I've helped them, find themselves again in this fandom, and that to me is like the most touching thing that I could ever want for anyone. And I think that that's something that you could probably relate to, because I remember Star Wars Insider when I was a kid. I remember the magazine showing up at the house. My dad would, flip through it and he'd hand it to me. And I remember going through and I was like, oh, like, the latest Clone Wars article or the latest. And for some reason, when I was a kid, that was what I preferred to read over. I preferred to read Star Wars character encyclopedias instead of, dinosaur encyclopedias instead of, actual books that kids should be reading. But it's just things like that. And that's why I have to thank you for all the work that you've done throughout the decades on Star Wars, because on someone like me, it's made an impact. Your articles, your work, it's been there, and it has impacted people like me who grew up with this franchise, grew up with a different era of Star Wars, helping me to have a better appreciation for what came before my time, and helping me also to feel like the thing that I'm into is like the cool new thing that, has all the articles and the magazines and on the websites. So it's you and people like you that, you guys are a very important part of the Star Wars fandom. So seriously, thank you for everything that you do for this fandom.
That's very kind of you to say so. It's nice to know that people do read it. And you mentioned the word gatekeeping. I hate gatekeeping. I've got no room for that at all. And always been of the opinion that I've been into it for 48 years now. And there's 7-year-old kids now, 5, 6, 7-year-old kids who've just seen their first Star Wars today. Yep. And it's all they can talk about. It's all they can think about. I'm no bigger a fan than they are. I'm no bigger a fan than you are. Steve Sansweet's no bigger a fan than I am. We're all in it together. So, we all absorb stuff and we all learn stuff and we all pass on stuff. And we've all got nephews and kids and nieces and all sorts of stuff and friends and yada, yada. We want to share it. Yeah, that's the whole thing. You doing the 5. I'm an honorary member. I'm proud honorary member of the 501st. So, sharing that news, I would cover what you guys do and let people know that you're out there doing the things you do. I know this month it's Childhood Cancer Awareness Month for the 501st. So you've changed your logo, the gold logo. So, we posted that on Fantha. So just sharing the news, letting people know that bad guys do good and all the things that you do. And, it's all part of this ecosystem, this Star Wars ecosystem that doesn't work on if you foul the water, it doesn't work. If you just keep it positive and just keep it flowing, it's the best thing in the world.
Yeah. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time here, because I know we said we'd run about an hour and we've run over that now.
That's fine.
So I have a couple questions that I usually ask everybody that I do interviews with on the channel here, but I did want to ask you one other one first. Out of everything that's coming, movies, shows, books, you name it, video games, what is the thing you're most anticipating and why from Star Wars right now?
It's probably a cheat answer because it's not a thing, it's a time. It's the 50th anniversary. Yeah. I'm so excited to see how the world celebrates it because it's never left the zeitgeist. It's one of those rare things that's always referenced. We get soaps here in the UK that make little Star Wars jokes all the time. TV shows will mention little things. It's always there. So when we get to 50, as much as I'm really buzzed for for Starfighter. I'm really looking forward to seeing Starfighter. I think that's going to be something very special. And Mando and Grogu, I'm very excited about. Obviously, Ahsoka season 2 is not far away from finishing filming now. Obviously, excited about that. But really, I think just where the world's going to be when we get to the 50th, we'll have had celebration in the April. We've got the Star Wars re-release at the end of the month. Then we enter May for May the 4th, and then up towards the 25th, and on the 27th, I think it is, we get Starfighter. So I'm just excited for that period of time. So I will say it's a cheat answer, really, but I'll say the 50th.
I'm excited for that too. I think right now the immediacy of Mando and Grogu's my most exciting thing, and obviously Ahsoka season 2. But yeah. I mean, the 50th anniversary. I mean, they've already started announcing stuff. We're gonna have celebration over here in the States for the first time in a few years now, so that's gonna be exciting. I'm definitely gonna be trying to go to that.
Well, I'll see you there.
Oh man, everybody's going to be there.
Yeah.
We'll just hope that I can get tickets, because I hear it's a nightmare to try and get tickets.
It can be tricky, but yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, so I'm excited. It's going to be an exciting year, and to think that Star Wars has been around for 50 years feels like too long, but not long enough at the same time. Because I feel, for me especially, it's been there since before I was born. So my entire life, I've never known life without Star Wars. No. So. But yeah, so I will give you my 3 lightning round questions that I ask everybody that I interview on the channel. So the first one would be, what is your favorite Star Wars movie?
Empire Strikes Back. Okay. Early days, it flip-flopped between Star Wars Empire and Jedi, but it's Empire.
Nice. And then your favorite Star Wars TV series or show?
Ooh, I'd probably say Andor. I think it's pretty flawless. So that's an easy answer these days, but I'll say Andor.
Nice. And then your favorite Star Wars character?
Oh, it's a very tough call between Han and Lando.
Lando.
Yeah, when I was a kid, when I was writing fanfic, I was lucky. In 1983, I had a letter printed in Return of the Jedi Weekly when I was 11 or 12, and it was I wrote fanfic. So my character Yan was. I wrote a letter about this little adventure Yan and Lando had, and they printed it in Star Wars Weekly.
That's too cool.
Just Lando was just my guy. I love Cloud City. I love that whole Hello Best Man Goodbye era of the old Marvel run, and just Lando was such a cool character and so misunderstood. And in the current run, the Charles Soule run of Star Wars, when you saw what a rotten time they gave Lando for being in the most impossible position. I've always had a lot of time for Lando, and as he matured and was just, he's a rogue and he's a gambler and all the things that he did. But what do? Do you stick up for a guy you've not seen for years with strangers, or do you protect a city of thousands? It's an impossible choice. So
especially when the government's knocking at your door.
Well, exactly.
At the same time.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
So it's Han is easy to love. Who doesn't love the Falcon? He's another one. They're peas in a pod. But so. Do I have to give one answer, Han or Lando?
No, you can give both if you want. Yeah,
I will give both. That's my chicken
awesome.
answer.
That's a good pair. That's a good pairing, and it makes sense. Again, you said earlier why Solo is severely underrated. I mean, I thought both performances from Alden Ehrenreich and his name is escaping me.
Donald Glover.
Thank you, Donald Glover. Both their performances were amazing, and they had such different takes on how they portrayed their legacy characters, and I love both. Yeah, so
absolutely.
But Mark, thank you so much for joining me here. Thank you for taking the time. This is a great conversation. I love having conversations like this. Just geeking out about Star Wars. Is there anything you want to plug? Anything that you want me to share around?
No, other than head to fanthatracks.com if you get the chance and just check out what's there. All the pods are there. The YouTube stuff's on there. It's the hub for everything Fantha. And if you want to sort of buzz me on social media, it's Prefect, Prefect, Prefect_timing, because I'm also a Hitchhikers fan, so that's where that comes from. So Prefect Timing on socials.
Nice. All right, Mark, thank you again so much. Guys, again, check out, you'll find Fantha Tracks in the description below on the post here, whether it's on Spotify, on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, you name it. And you'll also be able to find Mark's social media in there as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. We'll catch you for the next one, and may the Force be with you.
Breaking off. All units, fire at will. 1-2, pick your target. Too many, Captain. Watch your stabilizer, Gold 6. Anybody cover me. I got 2 vultures on my tail. Gotta hold them here. Watch your left. I can't shake them. I'm hit. Where's our reinforcement?